Tony?
Great. Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome. 2019, pre-lockdown, pre-COVID, we were able to get out and about. We did an approach to National Trust regarding doing a survey at their barns, because we are doing a survey at the Bradford-on-Avon Tide Barn, and we did Messham's in Tisbury and various other barns within Wiltshire to build up a corpus of trends and appropriate signs that we find in churches and in barns and various old buildings as well. So without further ado, I'll just whip into it. For anybody that hasn't, right, that's not moving. Okay, let's just try that. Anybody that hasn't heard of us or seen what we do before, because we've spoken about us a few times over the years. We were established in 2014. We don't confine ourselves to the medieval period. We do early modern, World War I, which I've done some stuff with Dan, and World War II as well. We've done some murals and things like that. And we generally use it as an exercise in the community, and we like to involve local people and people have an association with a building we may be surveying. We add to their knowledge of the building, and hopefully we address a few in terms of revealing bits and pieces that they may not know are there, which is always good fun and always education for all of us. Right, so how do we do it? For the purposes of the survey at Lacock, we do some extra bits and pieces like photogrammetry, and we do a thing called reflectance transformation imaging, but we generally do them on very special pieces. For the purposes of Lacock, it was absolutely fine. On the left, you can see an oblique raking light that we do, which just essentially reveals details. I liken it to a low winter sun on landscape, really, because it just reveals more and more detail for us, and then we take a digital photograph of that. The next photograph is not just for David's benefit, it just shows us in work in the Tide Barn in Bradford-on-Avon, and it's getting over the height issue. English Heritage won't let us use ladders, which is fine, and I'm sure we can't use ladders on the risk assessment through the Wiltshire Archaeology Field Group either. So we had to use, we used a camera on a pole basically, which is attached to a computer tether, and the lights are also on poles as well. And yeah, it works all right. It's better than nothing, and we just need to work at it a little bit harder, get used to it. The floor in Bradford-on-Avon is very unstable, so, and that's basically a three-piece. It's actually from a radio mast, but it's telescopic. It all sits together quite nicely, and it's a very solid base, so it works quite nicely. So, as I say, Bradford-on-Avon Barn. This is what we're looking at in terms of apopatreic. Apopatreic is Greek, and it's from the Greek, and it means to avert. So it's averting malevolence or evil spirits or the evil eye. There's various connotations of that. It's not all apopatreic marks. Some of these marks, like this hexaphore, for instance, which is the daisy whorl, you can see it on the top left. They can be used for planning out buildings as well. You have to be cautious. But in this scenario, in the Bradford-on-Avon barn here and in the Lacock barns, they are predominantly apopatreic. You can tell that by the positioning. You can tell that by the different styles. As you can see, this is in the Bradford-on-Avon barn, and it's high up, and it's protecting that inner space from the outside. Now, as regards the rosette or the daisy wheel or the hexaphore, as you will, we see it in various, formal contexts. Andy Marshall, who's an architectural photographer, very kindly lent me this, which is the Cheltenham Minster rose window. So it's whether you view it as a solar motif, or whether you view it as a geometric, highly detailed pattern, it just shows that I'm in very formal context. Top left is a tile in Herefordshire. I'm currently staying at the moment, which is great. That's bringing that hexaphore right into the formal context. And the top right is a wonderful, wonderful ex-church, which is now a private establishment, and a quick tap on the door got us a photograph of their lintel, which is showing various formal motifs of graffiti that we find out in the field. Bottom left is Breadwood Iron Church, and just to show about the protecting of the space, that's on a church doorway lintel. And as you walk underneath it, the bottom right one is another foil right underneath, again, cleansing that air, cleansing that liminal space as you cross the threshold. And that's a lot of it is about that, is about the threshold and protecting that space. They can vary, they can vary in their standard of execution. And that's again another telling point. If Mason has done it, or somebody that's skilled in the tools, I've got a couple of tools here. Let's see if we can get them on camera. Pair of compasses and a race knife, which a carpenters use. This is a period piece that was bought for me, which is very nice. So the small circles in wood, etc., you can find, and the scratch marks, carpenter's marks. We'll see some of those later. This piece that's in front of us now, which I shall show an annotated version, uses an extremely large pair of these, because this is about 4 foot across, and this is at St. Peter's at Great Cheville in Wiltshire. Massive piece, wonderful, really nicely executed, and it's done on a vertical surface. More than one person involved, large pair of compasses, more than likely done it, and that may be for planning, but we think it's up a Portraic. It's huge. It's probably the largest one we've found so far. And then you get into more complex executions. This one was pointed out to me by Dorothy Treasure, Builder's Record. If you're on here, Dorothy, hi. She said, you want to come and have a look at these scratches on here, Tony? So we went and had a look. And it's only when we got home that we actually realised I put it on a big screen and annotated it. And bearing in mind, it's a pillar in Shurston Church, and it wraps itself halfway around the pillar. And it's 3/4 of a metre in diameter, and it's a beautiful double hex foil, extremely difficult to do. And I don't know if we can see that. There we go. Alison Joy, thank you very much if you're on here. She sent me a paper on geometric patterns as material things and how to actually construct this circular motif on a circular surface. If anybody wants to look that paper up, it's absolutely wonderful. It's complex in how you actually do it, but it really did give us an education on how to actually form this marvelous, because there's no imperfections in it whatsoever. So it was obviously done by somebody that's skilled at using the tools, skilled at the background and making the motifs. You know, this is not the norm. This is a very highly skilled piece. So on to the Lacock. 3 barns. So we've got 2 of them are remarkably disappointing, but the Tisbury Barn more than makes up for it. So we'll have a look at the Fox Torbert barn first. Now the museum, built in the 16th century as a barn and stables, and very difficult to photograph. So this is something we've come across. So if you look at Tisbury, Messon's Art Gallery at Tisbury, which has taken a 14th century building and then made it into something for the 21st century, it's wonderful. It's a total opposite to the Bradford and Avon Barn, which is a wonderful space in itself. But the Tisbury Barn has been really done out with underfloor heating. They've paid homage to the way the building was constructed. They haven't altered it very much. They've made it a very, very usable space. It's a wonderful building, but not very good for us. There's a small lodge on the side. I think this is late. I think this might be 18th century. So actually, we must have picked the circles. Now the window's a bit incongruent, so it makes me think it's been moved from somewhere else. It doesn't seem to fit the lodge. It's almost like they built it and thought, oh, hang on, we need to stick a window in there. So you've got these great big casement stones around it, which don't really fit the building at all. But nonetheless, the circles are there, and we do find them in context of stables, etc., etc. Now, again, we've got a nice hexaphore. I'm not going to show you hexaphores all night, but there are quite a few, because even I can have enough of looking at too many hexaphores. This is tucked away. We've had to use a bit of software this to straighten this up and alter the profile on it, because it's tucked away behind a newel. And this is the problem for us. The problem for us at the Fox Torbert barn is it's dry lined, and it's not only dry lined, but they've cut the plasterboard so that it actually fits perfectly the rubble stone construction. So they haven't cut a straight line down, so we couldn't get a torch behind it. They've actually cut in between the stones. Great workmanship, incredibly frustrating, but nonetheless, the next time it's due for a refurb, we'll be in there and survey it properly. That's what it comes out looking like. That's one. So there was enough to tease us, just enough to whet our appetite. And again, you've got to look at the building in the context of the 21st century, and it's being used well. It's a beautiful space. We'll get there one day. If not, it'll be one of my ancestors or something. Now, the Manger Barn, which isn't open to the public generally, it's a conference centre and conservation area. So we didn't do the conservation area, which is the right-hand side of the barn, because they had some bits and pieces in there that didn't need to be disturbed, to be honest. We did have a look, didn't find very much in that side. And to be honest, I went into the Manger Barn and actually did this myself. I went through the paperwork for it because I looked at it and was disgusted. But electronically it looks okay. And what we've got is a load of carpenter's marks. So remember the race knife I mentioned earlier? They would be using that to mark where the beams are, probably constructing the roof on the floor and then moving it up onto the building. And they're beautiful, really, and in their own way. And they may even be, and I'm sticking my neck out on this, bottom left hand with the joint there. They've marked out where the joint is to be cut. And to my mind, that's a Marian symbol. I've annotated it. It's a Marian symbol, a Mary symbol. So it's evoking the power of the Virgin Mary to protect joint, as it were, or to protect the building. I may be on the wrong end on that, but however, that's how I'm seeing it. It matches other M's and A's and R's and various other things that we find elsewhere. I did get a little bit excited, just a little bit excited with the bottom right hand, because I found in several places a metre from the ground. That should have been the giveaway. They're all a metre from the ground. There's parts of bottles deposited into the mortar between the rubble stone. Excuse me, it's not on it. It was found on the floor when they renovated the building in the when was it, the 90s, I do believe. And they ended up taking these pieces of broken bottle and depositing them within the building. Now that's a wonderful thing to do in itself, making a deposition like that within the fabric of the building from something that existed when the building was in use as an agricultural building. The tithe barn, tithe barns, but they were used for tithes for a while, yes, but in general, agriculture is a year in, year out thing, and they would have used it for storage and everything. And I understand they used this in the 17th century for markets and things like that. And I think this doorway is a later doorway in the front. It hasn't got any graffiti around it, so we're assuming perhaps it might be in 18th century or something like that. Wonderful building and loads of marks. 8 bays, I do believe. Raised construction, rubble stone, dressed stone on the coins, which is great because when it's dressed stone, it really invites you to make a mark, or if you're going to put a protective mark in, you're going to put it on a threshold. And if somebody's put a nice bit of dressed stone in there, oh, that's lovely. And it's limestone as well, so it's oolitic limestone, bath stone, so it's very soft until it weathers. And then, you know, it's very easy to actually make a mark within it, and the marks tend to stay there. It's got an east porch on it. So this is from the east looking into the barn itself, which again, cobblestone construction, beta crux, and rendered, which is important. We'll come to that in a minute. So we needed a way of recording all this because the Tig barn, same as the Bradford and Avon barn, which is all dressed stone. The Messham's barn is rubble stone with coins and door jambs. We needed a way of being able to record it that anybody could find their way back to whatever we'd located. So simple CAD program and drew out a plan of the barn, and then zoned it. So each one of these represents a zone where we found the graffiti, and it enables us to tag that in. You'll see as the pictures go down through. On the timber markings, because there's markings on several different mediums, so we've got the dressed stone and the timber on the crux, the wind braces, and also on the crux supports as well. So just to give an example, with the render, a lot of the render is gone. And we're finding this with a lot of barns that we do, where they are rendered, they're rendered up to a certain point. As you can see the old level there, which is probably 3 or 4 foot off the ground. And you can see by the top left-hand corner, the zone it's in. So it's in the east porch on the south wall. And it's interesting because, well, it's interesting to me at least, it reveals some very circles, compass drawn, interlocked. The one on the left particularly, probably the one on the right as well. You've got this consecration cross style, which is very similar to what goes into churches when they consecrate them. And the overlapping circles produce that, which is quite nice in itself. So it's, again, you'll see these things in Christianity. You'll see them adopted into an informal context. The barn is very much an informal context. And it shares very similar design to actually in the Lacock Abbey itself. On the render in there, the remaining render, there are circles in there very, very similar to these. Now, to my mind, we're recording what is still remaining, and we have no idea what it would have been like in its heyday. There would have been so many more, but that's the way it goes, you know. Time takes its toll. So on the wind braces, so we're in bay 4. We're finding some just gently carved circles. Nothing very grand, nothing very exciting, but the fact that they're there is enough for us to record. I'm sure I'll jump one then. Let's try it. So there we go. With the annotated version, it just brings a bit more detail out, enables us to, again, log where they are. And again, you're protecting that building. The wind braces are structurally quite something. So you're protecting the building, I feel, rather than the actual crops or whatever storage you've got in there. The crux, which again, there's modern stone underneath where the crux may have gone to the ground, but they've got supports in there and more modern stone underneath. But on this one remaining one has got some apoplectic marks, and of course they're very, very eroded, but they do come out quite nicely when you annotate them. And again, this is for presentation purposes. On site, you'd be lighting it up with an oblique light, and you can show people. But of course, this is the easiest way to do it en masse, as it were. Now, between the east porch and where it joins the building, that would have been a threshing floor there. And again, there may be some connotations with the threshing and protecting that space. Again, you're stepping another threshold. You are working within that space, and you have the doors open and the wind's blowing in to separate the wheat from the chaff. So there may be some argument here that this is protecting that space from the outside malevolence being brought in by the winds. So we've got here several hexaphores overlapping. We're back to the ends again. Possible Marian marks invoking Mary, using charity to protect that space. Whether it's pre-dissolution the marsh is or post-dissolution, we've got no way of telling that. Again, still in the East Porch, you can see on the zone exactly where it is. We've got a nice couple of hexafoils which come out quite nicely, but you do need a torch in there. They have artificial lighting in there. We were kindly given a key to switch the lights off, and we could do more or less what we wanted. But if you do go, take a torch with you, and you should be able to find various hexafoils and a few other couple of things that will come up in a moment. Now this one was interesting because the centre one sort of represents almost a scratch dial, but it's not. We've seen various scratch dials which have been moved in the buildings and perceived as scratch dials, but we don't believe this is. And again, we think there's some apotropaic function. One thing we are trying to do with the other barns we're doing is tie in a hexafoil is one thing. On the right here, we have some weird connotation going on. We don't know what's going on. We are trying to build a portfolio of different designs that actually match. They may never come to that. There may be some sort of uniqueness to them. But there we are. Unless we record them, we're just not going to know. And as our knowledge builds, and we do share this around the country with other groups. And again, you know, if they see similar, then they get in touch as well, which is really beneficial to both. A lovely version here, nice piece of stone, nicely dressed. And then we've got several circles just gently overlapping each other. I do like that one. It's one of the first ones we found in there. Now, when it comes to the old adage of schoolboys doing graffiti, it's generally not. If I can bring that down there a minute. It's generally not. It's generally adults doing it, but on occasion you might find that there is a schoolboy doing something or other. It was the mortarboard that did it for me. You don't see mortarboards these days. Now, I do know that Lacock during World War I was, I think it was an education establishment, it was a school. So there may be some influence on that. We just don't know. We can't date these. It's, you know, some of the other figures that we found in the past, such as Imber, we managed to date them to the sort of early 15th century because of the clothes that the detail put into the scratchings. This one's just very abstract. We're putting it down as a teacher. It's not very well executed, so we're thinking the child probably did it. But it's when we come to, and this was a lovely find. Christina, staff, drew my attention to this. She sent me a photograph, which probably precipitated why we wanted to get into Lacock, really. Again, that stone's we've got a lot of scratching on it, but when you annotate it and when you put it on a big screen and when you light it correctly, you're getting a concentric circle. I've ignored the initials that are put over the concentric circle, but we've got a, what we call this the Nun Stone. The nun, it may be a nun, it may be as late as First World War, it may be one of the school teachers. It's an authoritarian pose. It's probably done by a man. It's reasonably humorous, and it's not very well executed. It's just a fairly abstract thing, but it's the hand on the hips. And again, it being a nunnery, the women would have been in control, and perhaps somebody took umbrage to that, one of the agricultural workers. But nonetheless, you know, he's had his telling off or whatever, and he's immortalising it, which is wonderful. Now, I mentioned consecration crosses earlier on. This is in the main barn itself. Lovely piece of dressed stone. It's a crux support. It's very low down. It's probably about a foot off the ground. So again, we've got the cross here, and it took one of our members, Claire Radnich, to she's got better eyes than me, to pull out a bird. Now there's a bird just here, which I've had to have several attempts at annotating. We actually managed to light it from several different areas and bring it up quite nicely. So that's what it comes out like, which is okay, It's not beautifully executed. We've got better ones. I'll show you in a moment. The best part about it was the head, which lit up beautifully well. And I think it's either a goose or a swan, but I can't be sure. But nonetheless, when we find characterizations of birds and animals, it adds another dimension to what we're doing in terms of survey work. You don't very often see these. We've got a couple of others. At St James's in Titherington, the oldest church in Wiltshire, apparently. There's a highly eroded piece of Bath stone, highly eroded, but we just managed to get this out. We've annotated it. It's very nice, abstract, but it's got flowing lines, beautiful. So it's a little bit different to our friend in Lacock, but nonetheless, it's still a personal thing. And the one at Bath Abbey, which is a snipe, I do believe. Somebody else may correct me on that. I'm not an expert on birds, I must admit. But again, this was done in conjunction with a plumber. This is probably early Victorian. He made it part of his trademark as he left the graffiti in the Abbey. But this one, we just don't know how old this is. And it's nearly gone. It's very nearly gone. So we were quite chuffed to say that. But that sort of rounds up where we are at the moment with Lacock. The reports have been done. You can, if you just Google Lacock apoplectraic symbols on Academia or Humanities Commons, both will come up. You can download the whole lot from there. It's quite a large file. And I'd just like to say thank you for watching and listening. And please acknowledge the people that helped us get where we are with this. Thank you very much. However, just to tread on raised toes, just a couple more minutes. What's next at Lacock? We have got a license to do we have an agricultural license to do barns. The next step is to do the brew house and the bakehouse. And you'll see these in the tea rooms, actually. These are taper burn marks or burn marks, which are purposely done. We did have a discussion with one of the ladies in Lacock. He said, no, it's just where you put a tea lamp up and it's been left there and it burns away. No, it doesn't do that. There's plenty of archaeological evidence and experimentation to show that these are deliberately formed. And I think there was a fire in the brew house anyway. So this is in the door in the Broom House. There is actually one burn mark here. The rest are all ferrule stains from the iron nails, so we had to discount those, but there is one burn mark there. But on this doorway, it's a fantastic doorway, and I had to forward it to Tim Easton. We had some discussion about it because it's got these wonderful geometric hexafors on there, really nicely executed, beautifully done. So when things have calmed down, when we're back on schedule, the whole planet that is, then we'll get back in there hopefully next year and complete the task in the brew house and bakehouse, and then that'll add to the corpus of Lacock. Somebody is actually doing the taper burn marks, or burn marks I should say, which is fine. They don't excite me that much. James Wright, if you're watching, sorry about that, mate, but they are quite interesting. I know you do like them a lot. But there we are. That's where we are, and that's where we're going next. So there we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tony. That was brilliant. Really interesting as always. David, do we have any questions for Tony?
Yes, we got the first one from Jonathan Parkhouse. Are these marks found throughout the British Isles? And can I add elsewhere in Europe?
Throughout Europe, throughout the UK, and in the USA as well. There's lots of work being done on barns, relatively modern, in inverted commas. There's a few people that have published works in America. Crystal Hollis is doing a PhD at Exeter. Hi, Crystal, if you're watching. She's done a lot of work over there as well, but particularly Europe, particularly the UK. If you want a Facebook group to have a look at the English Medieval Graffiti Facebook page. that's growing and growing and growing daily. That's probably the easiest resource that you could tap into to see the extent of these marks and how prolific they are. A friend of mine sent me an ammunition box from the Civil War in America, and by coincidence, somebody had unearthed one in, I think, on either must have been off Portsmouth or somewhere like that. They'd unearthed one with a hexafoil on the ammunition box, and so we shared information on that. The one in the museum in the States matched exactly the one that was coming over and sank. So it didn't protect it from explosions or fire, but it did protect it from that, but it didn't stop it from sinking. So it probably wasn't entirely its fault, but there we are. So yes, very, very widespread. Once you start looking at older buildings, once you start looking, that's it. You'll either disregard it or you're hooked. So at the end of the day, you'll find them everywhere. It's quite bizarre. And of course, the belief systems are different now. They're very superstitious marks. So belief systems are slightly different. But you can look at the fact of King James I writing demonology and encouraging you to put marks by entrances to buildings and things like that, but it predates that. You've only got to look at Project Fear in terms of governments now, in terms of widespread condemnation of various things. So these marks spread very, very quickly, very, very widespread, and in various mediums as well, whether it be stone or wood or whatever. Even arbor glyphs, Dan. We've seen some of those. New Forest.
Yeah.
And Salisbury Plain. Yeah. Carlos and Janine have asked, are there any contemporary references to the symbols to enable you to date them or determine over what period of time they're being carved?
Good question.
That question comes up very, very frequently. It's very, very difficult. You've got a terminus antiquem and a terminus postquem, and that's all I can say really. You know when the building was built. You may understand where modifications have been made, and that's something we're looking at Bradford-on-Avon. Early part of the 20th century, a lot of it was rebuilt. So we can see the stone that's been brought in. We can, it hasn't got any markings on it for a start. Other pieces of stone have been put in which shouldn't be there, so either they've been dressed to take a render. So you've got to understand it's a 600-year-old barn, and it was a working barn for 500 plus years of its life. So it's going to have conservation work, it's going to have repair work, and it's going to have cheapest work possible done. The major restoration in the 50s, the 20s was done by Bratspear. In the 50s, the major work was to stop it sliding on the front. So we can see whether the walls have been rebuilt. So again, we've got that terminus antiquem on that. It's very, very difficult to date. There's a very, very few secure contexts, which I'm sure I shall get fired down for because there's probably plenty. But at the end of the day, it's a very, very difficult thing to date.
Tony, can I just for that question, I know there's a couple of other questions, but what about stylistic changes or typological changes through like a sequence through time?
No, it's a simple thing to do. We did it at school, doing one single hexafoil, for instance, with 6 petals. All it is divide the radius and then radius around the arc, and then more or less you've got 6 petals. What they don't teach you in school is you can actually put any geometric shape within that. Maybe they do and I missed that, but at the end of the day, you can put any geometric shape within that. So it's quite an important tool from a geometric point of view, never mind the apopatraic side of things. So a simple hexafoil is wonderful, and then you get more and more complex, but we're not seeing necessarily stylistic changes on that. And it only comes into dating with the Imber stuff that we did, where the chaperon hat, which was only in fashion for 50 years in Britain at that time, was magnificently displayed on this night. So that one was an amazingly easy one to do. We got it within plus or minus 30 years. So
Okay.
got that. But that was clothing determinant, not stylistically geometric, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. And from Cynthia Poole, not a question but a comment. The circles remind me of impressions of circles on a number of Iron Age hearths.
Yes, yes. Well, Cynthia, thank you. I was saying to Ray earlier on, as your next speaker, I spent a couple of days in Kilmartin Glen in August, which I was very fortunate to do because rock art is one of my first loves. And so, yes, I fully understand where you're coming from with that. They didn't have the tools that we had. Some of the stuff we have forwarded to Andrew Marion Jones and other people because we were confused. We thought it was a reused grave slab from a very much earlier period, and they came back and actually said no, it's done with iron tools, so it's a lot later and very hard iron tools, so it's a lot later than we imagined, which was okay, but at least we went to the relevant people with experience just to remove it from our thoughts, really. So yes, I can fully understand that.
Okay, and Katie Whitaker is asking, are there similar marks on ships' timbers, thinking of the Mary Rose or more recent vessels?
Yes, I think so. I didn't think there's from memory on the Mary Rose, I'm sure there's a hexafall on the bottom of a plate somewhere. I'd have to look that up, Katie. But yes, I'm sure that in terms of ship's timbers, this is one thing I was discussing with one of the chaps that was involved with raising of the Mary Rose, because they do look at tooling marks and things like that on the timbers. So I'm sure there's some form of marking. I just haven't investigated it any further, I must admit. But I know they look at tooling marks on timbers, which is one of the reasons they preserved the timbers, was to see how they were made, what tools they may have been using to fashion the timbers themselves. I'm sure somebody at the Mary Rose Trust could help you out with that.
I'm sure they could. Okay, that's it for questions at the moment.
Lovely.
Then anyone else? Nope. Speak now.
Oh, that's it.
No? Okay. In that case, I think
we'll let you off the hook, Tony.
Yeah,
say
thank you very
much. Thank you.
We were going to try and get a recording of an applause, but I think we might have, not sure if it was my responsibility or yours, David.
Well, I was just played it, but it didn't work. So
yeah, oh, you're playing it, so well done.
Hang on. Hang on. I was watching a conference the other day, and they had this button to press which showed a clap.
Yeah.
Ah.
Not on. Unfortunately, not on this. People can use chat and the like.
I couldn't find the button anyway, so never mind. Anyway.
Too slow.
There we are. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you very much, Tony. That's brilliant. I think what we'll just have is a 3-minute break, David. We'll let Ray
Sounds like a really good plan.
Just have a quick break.
Yep.
Let's get back on my clock at 4 minutes. At 18 minutes past 8.
Precisely.
5-minute break, 19. Between 18 and 20 past, but we'll start then. We want to carry on because we've got Ray to do his talk. So a quick break for everyone while Ray gets everything ready, and then we'll start again. Thank you.